All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. Today, we are going to be looking at several things that happened during World War II. Last time we left off, we talked about Dunkirk that was happening. We're talking about how the Nazis created laws to hinder the advancement of the Jewish people, and then at the Night of Broken Glass, how they really started to become more violent. We're going to see what happens to the Jewish people after this. Okay, so the objective today, we're going to analyze what Hitler's final solution was. We're going to examine Hitler's plan to invade Britain and Russia, and we're going to create an argument on whether Japan would have still attacked America if they had made peace. You're going to see there's an interesting thing that happens between um, Japan and America. Okay, so that's today's objectives. So here is your warm-up picture. Okay, the first question asks you to analyze this picture and basically tell me what's going on. Okay, look at it, look at the symbolism, things like that. What's going on here? Okay. The second question asks you, which country do you think that freedom plane represents? Now, it could be one country, it could be two, three, whatever. All right, but what does that plane, what countries does that represent? Or countries does that represent? And the last question asks you, who do you think is going to win between the freedom plane and the Nazi plane? You know, so uh, go ahead, pause the video, write down your response. Okay. If you really can't hear me, I do apologize. It's just that I have my windows open because it's nice and breezy right now. So yeah, I do apologize for that. Okay. But again, um, analyze the picture, what's going on, which countries or country represents the freedom plane, and then who do you think is going to win between the freedom plane and the Nazi plane? Okay, so pause the video, but we're moving on in three, two, one. All right, so Winston Churchill gives this amazing speech called "Fight 'em on the Beach" speech. Um, this is just a little part of his speech, but I'm going to read you guys the bottom half. Let me move this camera up here. All right, so this is what it says. Even through large tracts of Europe, and many old and famous states have fallen or may fall into the grip of the Gestapo. Remember, the Gestapo is the Nazis. And all the odious apparatus of Nazi rule. We shall not flag or fail. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength. In the air, we shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the field and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. And even if, which I do not for a moment believe, this island, or a large part of it, were subjugated and starving, then our empire beyond the seas, armed and guarded by the British fleet, would carry on the struggle until in God's good time the new world, with all its power and might, steps forth to the rescue and the liberation of the old. In other words, he's saying, we are not a bunch of sissies. We will go on. We will fight. Wherever these Nazis want to fight, we'll fight them. You know, we're not gonna, just lay down to them. We're gonna show them what we're made of. And he's saying at the very end, I don't believe it, but just in case the Nazis do take over and this and that, we have our empire, places elsewhere where our country has territory. They'll come fight for us. The new world, they'll come and help us. You know, that they're not going to lay down for Hitler and the Nazis, that they will fight. Okay. So on the same day that the British and French soldiers were being saved on Dunkirk, which was the last thing we learned from last week, Churchill gave that speech. Okay, June 10th of 1940, Italy declares war on Britain and France under the Pact of Steel um, agreement with Germany. Okay, remember this because this is going to play a role later on. June 14th, the German army goes into Paris and sets up a puppet government. Now, a puppet government is just exactly what it sounds like. A puppet, little hand puppets or ventriloquists or the little dolls with the strings. Basically, somebody else controls it. All right. So this puppet government, it's the government of France, but they have no say so and stuff. They have to get the okay from the Germans and the Nazis. Okay. This is going to play a role a little bit later. Okay. So just remember that the French government is not really their government. It's just a fake government set up by the Nazis. So now that the Nazis have taken over France, now their focus is on Britain. Okay. Hitler wanted to invade Britain. Okay. That's what he wanted to just stick it to him because he knew if Britain falls, he has all of Europe. There's nobody going to stand up to him. Um, the operation was known as Operation Sea Lion to take over Britain. Now, Hitler's generals, they knew, and so did Hitler, that you just can't invade Britain, okay, because they're going to fight back, just like Churchill's speech was. We're going to fight, we're going to fight. So he figured hurt their spirits, damage their will to fight. You know, you hurt that, you make them not want to fight anymore, they'll be easy to conquer. So what he does is they send German planes to bomb Britain throughout the summer of 1940. There's night raids in London. You hear these sirens going off and just bombs being dropped overnight. Anti-aircraft just shooting in the sky, just spraying and praying in a sense. A lot of civilians died, and a lot of property was damaged. So if you look at this picture here, right, that's a cathedral right there in the background. You see in the clear area. If you look at the front or the bottom part, you can see those buildings, right? But if you look through the windows, you can see the smoke. You shouldn't be able to see smoke, you know. So that basically tells you that the other half of the building are gone. It's just that wall that's standing up, supporting it. The rest of it's gone. So yeah, they did a lot of damage to Britain. So the Royal Air Force, the British Air Force, they defeated the German Air Force, which is called the Luftwaffe, in the Battle of Britain. Okay, so this stopped the invasion of Britain. Okay, because they're like, well, these guys are fighting back our planes. Chances are if we try to go by boats, that they'll just tear through our boats and things like that. So, yeah, because that's what they did to the British boats at Dunkirk, remember? They would torpedo them, they would shoot at them, things like that. So they were like, yeah, we shouldn't attack them because they're going to do the same thing to us, what we did to them. The thing was that Hitler and his generals did not know was that Britain was really, really low on resources, food, ammunition, steel, iron, things to make weapons. They were really low. Okay, so Churchill asked and got the resources he needed from the U.S. called the Lend-Lease Act. The United States would lend old planes, old tanks, things like that, to the British, or they would rent them out. Basically, they would lease them out to Britain. 1941, Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria all joined the Nazis. At the same time, Germany is taking over Yugoslavia and Greece. So there are some countries that were basically see the writing on the wall and they're like, yeah, you know what? We're going to just join the Nazis instead of them taking over us. And there's some countries like, no, no, we're going to fight them. We don't. We don't want to be part of them, and they get attacked. So if you look at the map, the blue area is all Nazi controlled, okay? Either through allies or they conquered it. The red are the countries that are going against the Nazis in Italy. The white you see are neutral countries. So if you let me move my little finger here, there you go, so you can still see. So, so Syria, which is part of Spain, some of that, Cyprus, they're part of the Allies. Okay. Now, it's at this time, I believe it's January 20th. I believe that's the date. Hitler um, gives the order for the final solution. Now, like I told you from last class, the Nazis when Hitler took over, the beginning part they would make laws to make the lives of Jewish people hell, right? They stopped them from progressing. They stopped them from going to school. They stopped them from being professionals. And then at the night of broken glass, up to this point, they were treated badly. They were beaten. They were, some people were killed. They were put in concentration camps. They were put in ghettos. Now, with the final solution, this is basically the extermination of the Jewish people in Europe. Hitler's like, kill them all. Um, they either, shot them, they starved them, or they took them to camps where they were gassed, killed, and then the bodies were disposed of, either burned or buried or things like that. You know, and in 3 years, 4 million Jewish people were killed because of this final solution. Okay. So here's my question to you. Uh, if the RAF, the Royal Air Force of Britain, had lost the fights against the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, do you think Germany would have taken over Britain? Do you think that the invasion would have been a success? If you say yes, tell me how fast you think it would have taken them to take over all of Britain. Would it take years, months, days? I mean, you tell me. What do you think? If you say no, there's no way they could have taken over Britain, explain to me why. Why do you feel that? Okay. Knowing the speech that Winston Churchill had and all that stuff. Um, so take a minute, think about it, write it down. Okay. But we're moving on in three, two, one. So with the invasion of Britain basically being, dead in the water, um, Hitler is basically like, you know what? He's telling his generals, I will make the plans now. I will be the thing. You guys can give me suggestions and I'll take into consideration, but I'm the man. I'm the one who decides what we're going to do. June 22nd, 1941, Operation Barbosa begins. This is the code name for them to take over Russia. Hitler wants to get Russia now. Here's the thing. Russia did have more tanks and more planes than Germany. However, their tanks and planes were older and not built as well. Germans are excellent engineers. Still to this day, they're very excellent, very good engineers. So they build amazing cars and things like that. But even back then, they built good, really good tanks and planes and stuff like that. In 1 month, they basically drove 200 miles into Russian territory, which is not bad. Um, Hitler and his generals started arguing more and more because, again, the generals are like, you really just don't go into Russia to start attacking. You know, look at what happened to Napoleon. Look what happened to so and so. These guys know their history. But Hitler's like, well, that's them. That was them. That was back in the day. This is now. We are better than them. We are superior than them. So the invasion was stalled up until October. And it's by this time that the Russian winter is really starting to come in, and a winter in Russia is unforgiving because that place can get extremely cold. Okay, so while that's going on in the southern part of Asia, Japan invades French Indochina. Sorry about that. I had to sneeze for a second. But the thing is, they invaded French Indochina, and they basically asked the French government, "Can we invade your territory?" And the French government's like, "Yes, you can invade it. Oh, we love you. Just go for it. Take whatever you want." Remember, the French government is a puppet government. All right. So remember, Germany and Japan are allies. They're friends. So when Japan asked France, the French puppet government, "Can we be in your area?" The Nazis are making them say, "Yes, you can be there. It's okay." And the thing is, people with like two eyes and three brain cells are like, "Okay, this is stupid." Because again, they're friends. And that one friend is controlling the government of these guys. So, yeah, no. And also, the United States and Britain had troops stationed nearby Indochina. So they didn't like the idea that Japan is coming more and more towards their area. And who knows, they might be trying to take over the area that they're at. So what they did is they embargoed the goods going to Japan. You have to remember, Japan's an island. They can't grow and they can't take things out of the ground like every other country. Because again, they're an island. They have to get a lot of the stuff brought into their country. So trade is important. But with the United States and Britain basically putting a strangle on that trade, things are getting bad for them. So what they do in retaliation, because they saw this as a slap in the face to them. So what they do is they slap back at America by invading Malaya. Malaya is where the United States gets our tin, rubber, and rice from. So because they invade that area, now our tin, rubber, and rice, the price is going to go high, and we're not going to get as much out of there because again, now Japan owns it. So we slap them, they slap us, and what the United States decides to do then is basically cut off the oil supply to Japan. They get 70% of their oil from the United States. So when the United States said, "Okay, you know what? Because you did that, we're cutting off your oil supply." Now they have to run a whole country off only 30% of the oil they would usually get. That's not going to work. So Japan is like, "Okay, okay, okay. Tell you what, let's have some peace talks. Okay, let's talk about this. See if we can come to an agreement." While they're doing that, they're getting things prepped back home. Okay. Um, Now you have to remember, from Japan to Hawaii, it doesn't take a day to get there or 2 days. It takes several weeks to go and to get to that point. And that's what happens. While the peace talks are going on, Japan is sending a bunch of ships at different places in the Pacific. Sunday, December 7th, 1941, 6 a.m. Honolulu time, a Japanese submarine periscope, thing that pops up to see so they could look around. It's seen by an American ship. 7:30 in the morning, that same morning, the Japanese send a message to the United States saying, "We're cutting off peace talks. No more peace talks between us. It's over." The United States is like, "Okay, well, that basically tells us that they're going to attack. But where?" They have no idea that the ships are basically right outside of Honolulu. And at 7:55 in the morning, uh, Pearl Harbor is attacked. So the thing is, these Japanese planes are coming in. They're flying really low, under radar. Okay, and the Japanese leader in charge, the captain, his name is Mitsuo Fushida. His job is to make sure that everything's okay. You know, that they're not caught on the radar, that the United States isn't, shooting back at them, that they're caught by surprise. And they really are, because a lot of the Americans, sailors, they're sleeping. They're sleeping. Some of them are barely getting up, taking a shower, brushing their teeth. Some are out on the deck, doing their job, cleaning. Some are doing their other jobs. But Fashida sees that, okay, we're flying low. Nobody's really doing anything. No one's noticed us. So he gives the order to attack. He breaks radio silence and he gives the code word, which is Tora, Tora, Tora. The first wave of planes come by and they catch our guys totally by surprise. Okay? Sun Tzu in the Art of War says that the element of surprise is one of the most key factors in a battle. When your enemy does not know you're coming, you have the biggest advantage of all because you can attack and you can do a lot of damage that way. And that's what happens. The first wave goes by, dropping bombs, dropping torpedoes, shooting at the boats, shooting at people, shooting at buildings. The second wave comes in, planes, right? Our guys are now more prepared, and they start shooting back at these planes, and they shoot down 29 of them. But the thing is, in those two waves, there was 353 planes that flew by. The United States lost about 100 planes, including the Oklahoma, the Utah, and one of the really hardest hit ones was the USS Arizona. That one had a lot of people in it, and that was like the beauty um, of our ships. The attack lasted about 2 hours, and 2,404 people, military and civilians, were killed. Now, as that's going on at Pearl Harbor, in Guam, Midway, and Wake Island, they're also being attacked by the Japanese. The next day, at the same time, Hong Kong, Philippines, and Singapore are all attacked by the Japanese. And eventually they would take over all these places except Pearl Harbor. They wouldn't take that place over, but they would take over by December 26th, so about a month, a little less than a month, they would control all those places. All right, so here's my next question for you. If you were the Japanese general, would you attack 7 places at once? Spread out your army, spread out your planes to attack 7 places at once, and you know, it would take a long time for you to conquer those areas. Or would you focus your area, maybe attack 1 or 2 places, you know, attack it, get it quick, right? Because you're putting a lot of your forces into these 2 areas so you can take over quickly. The trade-off is if you attack these 2 places, these other 5 places are going to start preparing, right? They're going to get their defenses ready. They're going to get their planes, anti-aircraft stuff ready, you know. But if you spread your guys out too thin, they may not. It's going to take a long time to conquer that area, or they may not even conquer it because again, they're too thin, you know. So what would you do? How would you attack? Would you go attack one place at a time? And again, maybe the other ones might be building up their defense while you're attacking one at a time. Would you go 2 at a time, 3 at a time? How would you do? What do you feel is the smartest way to attack and catch your enemies before they are fully, um, prepared to fight back? So what would you say? The other question is, it's obvious Japan planned to attack in order to gain control of the Pacific, right? Do you think that during the peace talks, if Japan had struck a deal with the US, do you think they still would have attacked the Philippines and Pearl Harbor? Because those 2 areas are owned by the US. Do you think they still would have attacked those places? What do you think? Do you think they would say, yeah, let's just attack them? Or do you think they'd be like, no, we made a deal with them. Let's keep that deal. But the other places, yeah, let's get them. Let's get them. What do you think? Okay. So pause the video, answer the question, but we're moving on in three, two, one. So here is your exit ticket question. At the attack of Pearl Harbor, there was actually supposed to be three waves of planes. Okay, there were supposed to be three. They only launched two of them. The guy in charge said basically, he goes, "We don't have the element of surprise anymore. They shot down 29 of our planes, you know, so why send the third? They're just going to shoot down more." But then his other lower guys are like, "Yeah, but they still got some planes, or they got some planes, they got some boats still out there." And he's like, "Well, is it really worth it? Who's to say we might get them?" And his guys are like, "Well, who's to say that they're going to shoot down more of our planes? We don't know. You don't know." So what do you think? Should they, if let's say you were Japan, should they have launched that third wave and just basically got rid of the all of the US planes and boats? Should they have sent them or not? Why do you believe this? Okay. So once you finish this question, you are done. Okay. So hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed it. All right. Next week, we're going to finish off World War II. Okay. So be sure you're here for that. You guys, take care. You be safe, and I'll see you later. All right.